start talking about Saturday night. Great atmosphere, first and foremost. I thought it was tremendous from man trip all the way through pregame. Appreciate the fans. I thought our athletic department did a great job with the lights and uniforms, the drone, all that kind of stuff. Disappointing. Table was set and we didn't get it done. And sometimes I come in here and talk to you guys on Monday and I'm over it and kind of moved on. That's not where I'm at really right now. Iowa State's a really good team. Credit them. They're undefeated, top 10 in the country right now. They do a tremendous job, but we just made too many mistakes. And in a game that has so few possessions, and so they had 9, we had 8. You just can't do things to beat yourself, and you can't have negative plays on offense, and we had way too many of them. We played really what I think poor complementary football, and just some sequences to kind of tell you what I mean is, so we take the lead, we're up 7-0, they miss a field goal. We got really good pressure on that. We drive down, don't convert a third down, have a chip shot field goal, we miss, right? And, well, what we need to do right there is defense put out the fire, still maintain the lead. What happens is we have miscommunication. They hit an explosive play, bang, it's 7-7. Like really poor complementary football right there. Offense, defense, special teams not feeding off one another. Then we come back, get a punt inside the 10, right? So we got the ball on the 9-yard line. Good complementary football. We hold them down, right? They punt. We're playing on a short field. Well, that's not what happens. They go on a marathon drive, 17 plays, 91 yards, score a touchdown. Well, next possession, like 2 minutes and a half, 2 and a half to go in the half. What complementary football should happen is the offense goes down and answers. It makes that a tied game going into half. What we did is we went out and didn't convert a third down, kick a field goal. We make it this time, but now it's 14-10. And then come out at half, defense gets two punts. They get 2 punts, and offensively didn't turn those into points. One of them was an interception, and it's on the interception, the ball's on 35-ish. And again, what we need to do is put out the fire. We don't. They go 65 yards, and now it's 21-10. And so just not good enough complementary football throughout, which was disappointing because we had chances. We really did. It's 28-16, but multiple chances, 14-10. And there's some calls that didn't go our way, and they had an effect on the game, but they didn't lose the game for us, but they had an effect. But the complementary football, that's where we've got to get better, and we've got to be a better team. I'll kind of recap it like I always do. Special teams, the issues that we had, we struggled at kicker. We missed a chip shot field goal. Our kickoffs were short. We didn't kick a legal kick on the onsides, just didn't kick it well enough. The positive, we had a big kickoff return, which we've been close, so it was positive. Traylon really hit it. We blocked it well. Thought Ollie Straw had a great day. 2 punts, 1 inside the I think 2 inside the 14, so really good day. He had great hang time. That continues to be a strength for us. And our coverage units, our kickoff coverage, even though our kicks weren't very good, our kickoff coverage was really good, and our punt coverage was really good. Defensively, the biggest thing that we've got to work on is getting off the field. They were 11 of 14 on end of possession downs, and I think 3 of them were long. They converted 9 third downs and 2 fourth downs. And then red zone, they scored touchdowns, all 3 opportunities. They had it there. Obviously, the miscommunication on explosive. Mike, I told you I'd answer that. Basically half the defense was playing one call, the other half was playing the other. And just a miscommunication that should never happen. And then we missed way too many tackles in the first half especially. Positives, 2.9 yards per rush. We really controlled their run game. We tackled much better in the second half. And we gave ourselves defensively opportunities to really take the lead and then stay in the game. Offensively, the negatives, red zone, and I use this as kind of a fringe and red zone. I think I talked you through this at the end. If you look at our red zone numbers, they look pretty good. I think, we're 2 of 3, scored 2 touchdowns. But in reality, there's 8 possessions in the game. So we scored 2 touchdowns. We miss a field goal. We make a field goal. And we have 2 turnovers and 2 punts. And so of those possessions, obviously 2 of them we scored touchdowns on. The missed field goal was inside the red zone. The one we made was right at the fringe area, and then the interception was right at the fringe area. And so if you take that into account, and that's kind of the way I look at it offensively, we only convert 2 of those 4, and that's not good enough. And then we just had too many negative plays. Most of them a result of a snap, but we had too many 2nd and 10 pluses. It's hard to operate. We're in 3rd and long, which we converted several of them, but just too many long yardage situations in the game. Positives, we continue to execute the 2-minute offense well. We were really good on the first play of our drives, which is something that's really important. And then our 3rd downs, we were 9 of 13. That's winning football. But just a disappointment. That's a game that we were right there and didn't make enough plays to win. So y'all can ask questions about that in a second. I'll flip it over to Kansas State. I think they're very similar in their style and approach to Iowa State. They're tough, physical, really disciplined football team. They're used to winning, and they've had success on the road as well. And so they won their last time here. I think Coach Kleiman and his staff do a really nice job in all phases. Special teams, they're really sound schematically. Edwards, who's their kick returner and punt returner, he's elite fast. He can really run, return a touchdown versus Arizona. And their specialists are good. They're kicking the ball in the end zone on kickoffs. Punter's doing a nice job. Offensively, they first and foremost, they want to run the football. They're leading our league right now in rushing offense. They're multiple. They shift. They motion, play a bunch of different tight ends. I think Giddens is playing extremely well. That's 31, the running back. I think he's playing. And they're using him in the throw game and the run game. He's doing well. O-line, I think they're very, very well coached. They do a nice job. They got a couple of NFL players up there. They do a great job communicating. They're on the right people. And they've got good speed at wideout. And they've been hurting people. Defensively, they're based out of a 3-down, 3 safety. They're more multiple probably than Iowa State as far as how they move around. They're playing at a high level. Best rushing defense in the league. I think they're 79 yards rushing, so they're getting after people in the run game. And they're talented at corner, really talented at corner. Play a lot of man coverage, and so the good thing is when you have disappointing performance, man, you're able to come back out and play. And we got another quality opponent coming in here on a Saturday night. So with that, I'll take questions.
So Neal, sort of follow up with something you were talking about Saturday. You said to ask you about. You said after the first drive, you said that I believe Iowa State made some changes defensively, and you guys didn't get the counter. What did they do? What were you trying to do?
Yeah, so we ran the ball. First of all, we broke some tackles in that first drive too. After going back and watching it, we broke some tackles. They had some guys right there, so their tackling was a little better. And then they moved their front around a little bit, and they traditionally play more of a 5-4-eye. They started sliding, and they played 2 big guys quite a bit, like 2 nose bodies. And I thought they did it. They had some pressure answers, where they're not a huge pressure team, but they pressured us a little bit more. They played more of what I would say is a traditional defense, meaning that middle safety. They played more of a kind of a quarters look with a traditional defensive front than playing the high safety all the time. So those are some adjustments that they made.
I know this was talked about after the game, and you mentioned that Green is definitely the starter. Is there anything that could change that as the season unfolds?
Yeah, I think.
How does that work?
Well, I think if you go across the country, everybody's enamored kind of with a backup quarterback, and we're very fortunate here because we have one that can play. And so. Are there scenarios where he could play? Yes. There's definitely scenarios where he could play. Has Garrett done enough to lose his job? I would say no. Did he play as well as he needed to on Saturday for us to win? I would say no to that as well. But Garrett's our starter. Nico's a really good player. I really believe that he's going to be the starter at some point. But Garrett hadn't done anything that he's played well enough. He's got to make better decisions. One of the interceptions was clearly pass interference, so I don't really blame him. The second one was a really poor decision. But Nico's got a bright future. We can win games with him. Are there scenarios where he could play in packages? Yes.
Along those lines, part of the coaching fabric, I guess, is you got to deal with second guessing. Whether it be the quarterback situation or whatever. How do you handle that? I mean, it's you get booed, you get questions from the media and fans.
I hope I mean, I just think it's the nature of the beast. I grew up with it obviously on a much smaller level. So my dad was a coach growing up, and then my uncle was a basketball coach at the high school level. And so, again, on a much smaller scale, you deal with that kind of growing up, the good and the bad of it. I think you start talking about preachers and principals and coaches. I mean, those are probably the most second-guess people, professions of any, and I think it's just part of it, like if you want to be at the highest level, and I would make a strong argument this is the second highest level of football. You have Power 4, and then you have the NFL. But if you're going to play, if you're going to coach, you're going to work at a high level in any given profession, that you're in public, which this is a public profession, you're going to get scrutinized. And I would tell you the same thing is like what I think, I don't know if you've asked me before, but you got to be careful who you take criticism from. Like you don't accept criticism from somebody you wouldn't go to for advice. I try to live that. I think I've said that here. I tell our players that quite a bit. But it's not I live kind of in a bubble during the season, right? And I basically am in this building, starting on Sunday all the way till I go to my radio show on Thursday night. If Dax has a flag football game, I may be up in public for just a few minutes. And then the game, and those are really so I'm in a bubble. And it's the same thing with all the coaches and the players here. What's hard about this from a coaching perspective is the family piece to it, because your families you're open to some of that scrutiny. And they didn't necessarily sign up for it, right? It's not like one of my daughters is calling plays or calling defense or making special team decisions, you know what I mean? But they have to deal with some of the side effects of it. And it's the same way with any of the coaches in the building. And it's the same thing for the players. Like if a player makes a bad play because of social media and what it is, then their parents are having to hear that, and the intent, I promise you, from a coaching perspective or a player perspective, is not to screw up. Like there's not that's not the intent, right? And so, but there is that's just part of it. I think you deal with it. Do you like it? No. Am I reading it? No. But do I know what's out there? Yes. I think you just kind of, you put your head down and go back to work.
You mentioned the opportunity that you guys have. What's the message to the team? Just, it's a quick turnaround?
Yeah, it's just, hey, it's next week, man. It's like, this is the way I frame it all is in the Big 12, it's a new week. And so, like, what we do is Sunday's our off day. A lot of guys are in the building with treatment and recovery, watching the stuff on their own. And then we team meet at 8 a.m., and then we position meet right after that. And then at 9:35, we do a corrections. At 9:50, man, we turn it over, and we flip it to the next week. And that's what we do every week, whether it's Oklahoma State and we blow them out and win big and play really well, or if it's Iowa State and they beat us and we didn't play and we didn't win and we didn't play as well. At 9:50, boom, it's next week. And so you make the corrections. You got to be accountable. And I think coaching-wise, player-wise, you hold yourself to a standard. When you don't meet them, you recognize that on video. You discuss about it. You make changes if necessary, and then you flip it over to the next week. And that's kind of the way we approach it while we're in season.
High snaps, is that something you can work on practice?
Yeah, we got to get fixed. Like he had a little bit of a hand injury coming in the game. Had a few issues in practice early in the week, not later in the week. But it was a detriment. We had 11 in the game. 5 of them were critical. And so, yeah, I mean, we got to get it fixed. Livingston came in and played. I don't know if it's the last 2 drives or just the last drive of the game, and did pretty well.
Was there anything you looked at and you said, well, timing-wise, it screwed something up? No,
it had to do with how he was gripping the ball and how it was taped because he had a hand injury.
But, beyond that, were there plays that were there, had the timing been?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. If you go back and look at the negative plays we had in the game, 5 of those were because of a snap. Now one of them ended up working out because Garrett pulled and ran, but the rest of them were not. And if you look at of how we played in most games, maybe other than the second half Penn State, we didn't play very well offensively, but we haven't been in second and longs, and our third and longs have been minimal, but we were playing in that game a lot more because of some of those negative plays.
How was Brandon's hand?
Yeah, I think he's better. Yeah, he's better. He snapped today. Like, here's the thing. He's played well up until the snaps, and it's kind of, his game's going to be judged by that, and fair or unfair, that's, he didn't snap the ball very well, so he's got to get it fixed, and we believe he will. Jaden Bray, yeah, he missed last week. He's going to miss this week too. He got hurt right at the end of the Oklahoma State game, and it's a lower leg injury. We're going to reevaluate it after this week and have a better answer for you, but he'll miss this week. Mike?
Opening stuff here today just sounds like you thought you were close Saturday, right? And been there, I think you probably felt like that before after some losses.
Yeah.
Feel like it's close, and then what is it? How do you, against especially good teams too, how do you get that on your side? And apart from like, don't make the mistakes that you had up.
Yeah, I think you got to create your own. There were some issues, like I said, like it's 14-10. We got the ball. We're inside our 30-yard line with really a chance kind of to score, and we throw a little option route that we clearly get pass interfered, and it goes for a pick, and that's a bad play. And did that turn the game? I don't necessarily know, but it was a big play. And then, we had a 3rd and 3 to get off the field, and we get holding. And here's the thing, we probably did hold the guy. But that's not really how the game was called, And so those are things that, fate, luck, whatever you want to say, like they worked against us. Now, with that being said, is we had some opportunities, we should make that field goal. We should convert the 3rd and 3 before that. We should hold on to that ball. We should have converted the 3rd and 2.5, but before we kicked the second field goal that we made. We should have got off the field on 2 3rd and longs that we didn't. We missed some tackles in the first half on 3rd downs that we should make. And so there's some, and I could go into, there's some calls that in the game, offensively, defensively, we'd like to have back. So like, there's some things that happen in the game that all these games matter. You think about that. That was an 8-possession game for us on offense and 9 for them. You go looking traditionally in our league what it is, it's usually in that 11 to 13 range. Like that's a uniquely small number of possessions. And so for us is we've got to be a group that doesn't beat ourselves. And when I say that, I'm not taking it away from Iowa State. I think Iowa State did a really good job. But we turned it over twice. They didn't turn it over any. Our penalties were higher than theirs. Now, after watching the film, do I believe that was accurate? No. But that's how it was called. We had 7, they had 2. And we made some mistakes. Like, they didn't blow a coverage. If they blew a coverage, we'd taken advantage of it. They didn't blow one. We did. We had miscommunication. And so there's things that happen in the game where we clearly beat ourselves, where Iowa State didn't. So for us to get to the level where we can win those games, where we can beat an Iowa State, where we can beat a Kansas State that we play this week, we cannot make those mistakes, and we didn't. And the thing about it is the previous week we didn't. So, and there's a lot of examples of that a year ago where we didn't, right? And so we're better, but to knock out a top 10 team, like you can't do some of the things that is listed.
Strike me as someone who goes back and studies these things. Have you found patterns or things that in the most inopportune moments where you can least afford it?
Yeah, and I hadn't had a chance to go back and look like over the last 2 years and like really examine those, Mike. But there's some instances where people are just better. Like we've played some games here where people are better. And I think that's fair. I usually kind of call it a spade, and they're just better than us. That's not necessarily the case here. That wasn't the case. That wasn't the case at Pitt. That wasn't the case here. We just didn't make plays at winning time or make calls at winning time. But I haven't gone back to answer your question. I haven't gone back and really examined the last 2 years those kind of games. Were you asking something, Greg?
Burks,
Yeah,
Jackson.
Burks. He's got a lingering deal. I don't know. I think questionable probably. He's only played I think 1 full game this year. He's really had some lingering injuries.
Jackson, you went off.
Yeah, man, he's playing really well. He did not practice today. I think it's going to be close. Hopeful, but he's got a little bit of a weird kind of lower leg injury that we're just going to see how he feels. He probably won't be able to practice much.
Copycat game. You anticipate Kansas State maybe doing some of the things Iowa State did to you?
Yeah, they're structurally, like if you look at how they're structured, it's a 3 down, 3 safety, but how they get to their different stuff is different. I mean, they'll have some takeaways. They'll see some things just because that was the first time we played a 3 down front. So some of the things we did in the run game, they'll be a little bit more prepared for. But structurally, coverage-wise, they're a lot different.
The way that Kansas State plays overall, do you see the possibility of there being another kind of low possession game like you saw this past weekend?
Could be. I really haven't studied like the pace they play at yet. I kind of do that like later in the week, Thursday and Friday, really kind of digging deep into like how the game's going to be played. We knew Iowa State was going to be, they were methodical. And we played slower too because we huddled most of the game. And neither one, the only drive that was very short for either team was the one we threw a pick on, the 2-play interception, then where Garrett made the bad decision. That was the only short drive of the whole game. But I haven't looked at their pace. It looks like on film they play with a little bit more tempo, but I haven't really studied that yet.
You mentioned who take criticism from and et cetera. Do you have any message to the fans? It's going to be in the night game. Obviously, you're going to want the stadium packed. Just missed opportunities with the games, kind of the vibe of the fans right now.
You would know the vibe more than I would just because I'm not on social media. I get that they want to win, but what I would say is, did they have a good time? You know what I mean? Like, did they enjoy it? It was pretty good atmosphere. I'm assuming they probably had a pretty good time tailgating. So if they're in the deal for enjoyment, then I would come back because I looked at the weather. It's going to be nice again. It's a night game, and we need them to provide a home field advantage. We need them. I get they're frustrated that we didn't win. We've played a tough schedule. Everybody that's beat us hasn't lost. All right, but that's no excuse. That's just the truth. And the games in our league are going to come down to the fourth quarter, and I don't think this one on Saturday is going to be any different. So we need them to help us. I do get their frustration, but I don't think it's when you watch our product. I don't think the product is something that they should be, other than the outcome. Like, our kids play hard. That was a really physical football game on Saturday. There's a lot of West Virginia kids out there spilling it out. And so there was clear strain, clear physicality. It was an entertaining football game. If you're a football fan, you're just watching that. It's pretty entertaining. We just didn't play well enough to win. And so I hope with that in mind, they would come back for another entertaining game that hopefully we can play better at the end and win.
On the note of fans, is there any extra pressure during a homecoming game to go out there and perform?
I didn't even know it was. Nah.
Crandall and Spells, are they still factoring in Crandall and Spells?
Yeah, Crandall was injured last week. I think I said that. Maybe Tony asked me about it on the radio show. He didn't practice, and then our two corners played pretty well, really, and so we just didn't sub much in that game. We gave up 2 deep balls that we shouldn't have, but they really played. Hollis played really well. I thought he was physical. Garnes gave a couple passes, but he was really physical in the run game.
Mentioned earlier that when he was looking at kind of the areas, he's like, they're just little things, a little twist here, a turn here, a tweak here. How heartening is that to know that those are the type of mistakes that are there and kind of the easier mistakes to correct, rather than like these big intrinsic things you're like, well, we're just gonna have to live with it.
Yeah. Who'd you say was talking?
Nick was Malone.
Malone. Yeah. Some of our issues in our run game, where Iowa State had success. And again, let me credit them. Like, they're in the top 10 on defense on most of the categories because they've got a great scheme and they've got really good players that do exactly what they're coached to do, and so they make it difficult on you. But some of our issues in the run game were poor footwork. We didn't ID a couple things the way we should have, and so those things are little mistakes, right? If you talk about this big picture, the only play in the game that is really frustrating to me is the blown where we had the miscommunication. The rest of it, like, Iowa State had to earn what they got other than that one play. Now, that one play should never happen. And then offensively, it's like some man coverage technique, winning versus man. Like on 2 of those third downs that we did convert were poor technique on a press in a press situation that we've got to be better at. Some of the run game, the snaps, I think that's a correctable situation. Some of the run game miscues, like, again, going back to footwork and things like that, a couple ID issues, those are easily correctable. And so those are things that we have to get corrected that should be able to get corrected. They shouldn't be stuff that's reoccurring.
K-State's one of the better teams, just statistically,
Mm-hmm.
of getting back behind the line of scrimmage, sacks, tackles for loss. What is it that you see that they're doing that are making them that effective, and what can you do to counteract that?
Yeah, so I think schematically you start off, they do a good job with some of their twists and some of their pressures getting vertical, especially in the B gap. The second thing I would say is they play two big noses that do a really good job of vertical push. One of them's about 330, the other one's a little over 300 pounds. They get vertical push. And then, their two ends, they play four of them total, but their two ends, especially 38, I think his last name's Mott, is really active, man. They get what I call strain sacks and strain pressures, where they just strain and maybe don't get it on the first or even second kind of initial move or the secondary move, but they get it just because they outwork some of those guys. So we got to make sure that we're playing at their level or a higher level of strain. Anybody else? Yeah.
You said before, like in the preseason, you do walkthroughs where you kind of go over stuff for future opponents, so you kind of plant those seeds there. I guess when the time comes, you do that, but just a general question, like how much is left in the bag, so to speak, offensively, defensively, that is ready to go, you just haven't had the time to use it or the moment to use it?
Yeah, so what we try to do is we try to you basically have your 4-down, your 3-down plans, or how people play it's a little bit different. And so, to kind of really simplify it, what we try to do is we do kind of a late spring breakdown on all the opponents we're playing. And then I spend some time in May just taking some notes with some of our analysts on kind of what are some plans, that we liked based on what they did last year. And we work those some in our summer OTAs, and then we work them in our fall camp, because we have a walkthrough in the evening, practice in the morning, have a walkthrough in the evening, and we break it down. In the mornings we really work versus our defense, kind of what you're doing at a full speed competition level, and in the evenings you're working walkthroughs versus opponent looks. And so, we just pick opponent, try to hit them 3 times, and that's kind of how we do it, And then on Sundays I go back and say, okay, here's our summer notes. Here's what they're doing so far. What matches up? And sometimes it's a good match. Sometimes we use a lot of it. Sometimes we use very little of it. That's kind of the way that we go about it. I think as far as tricks, there's always different ways to like change the picture for the defense as far as like where you're going to put your pieces. But schematically, as far as like your base schemes, I think at this point, through 6 games, your schemes are your schemes. You may do a little wrinkle here. You may arc a tight end rather than down block in or something like that. But for the most part, your schemes are your schemes.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Yep. Thanks.